Silence in Pripyat. Part 1. Anya and I went to Pripyat for content. I'd been filming travel vlogs for 3 years, and my numbers were dropping. People were tired of normal cities. They wanted something raw, emotional. And what could be stronger than a dead city where life ended in a single day? It took a long time to convince Anya. She was scared of the radiation, said the place was soaked in death. But when I promised it would be our most viral video yet, she agreed. We reached the exclusion zone early in the morning, guided by a local who took a few $100s to sneak us past the checkpoint. When we stepped into Pripyat, the air was still. No sound, not even birds. Only the crunch of glass under our boots and the faint crackle of the Geiger counter. My camera caught every moment. "This is it," I said to the lens. "The ghost city." Pripyat, where time stopped in 1986. The first day went smoothly. We filmed the school, the kindergarten, the amusement park. But that night, Anya woke me up, said she'd heard footsteps. I brushed it off, said it was rats or wind. But when I played back the voice recorder, the sound was clear. Footsteps followed by a child's soft singing. The next day, my camera started acting strange. Each time I turned it on, there was a short static sound, like someone breathing into the mic. I checked everything, but nothing was wrong. We kept filming, yet shadows started showing up in our footage. Faint, fleeting, like someone passing behind us for just a second. Anya was growing silent, tense. She barely spoke, only glanced over her shoulder every few seconds. That evening, we found an apartment to spend the night in. I set the camera on a tripod to record a time-lapse of the moonlight moving across the walls. We woke up to a scream. I turned on my flashlight. The camera had fallen. The screen was frozen on an image of our room, and a human silhouette in the corner. Black, featureless, standing between us and the door. I ran outside, grabbed the Geiger counter. 0. Absolute 0. Like the device was dead. The air felt thick, heavy, and for the first time I realized we weren't alone. And maybe we never had been. Morning came with a dead silence. Even the wind had stopped. I rewatched the footage, but the figure was gone. The camera showed nothing but the empty room. Anya sat by the window, pale and quiet, staring out into the lifeless city. "We're leaving today," she said finally. I nodded, but deep down I couldn't walk away. Not without one final shot. While she packed, I went to the main square, where the Ferris wheel still towered like a skeleton above the trees. I launched the drone to get an aerial view. But as it climbed higher, something appeared on the screen. A figure standing on the roof of the old kindergarten, still, watching. I zoomed in, and it vanished. The signal cut out. The drone crashed. I ran to the building, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. When I climbed the stairs, I saw footprints in the dust. Small ones, like a child's. They led to the edge of the roof and stopped. No drone below. No body. On my way back, I caught reflections in the windows, shapes moving. At first, I thought it was the light, but no. Someone was walking through each building, floor by floor, watching me from every window. When I got back, Anya was gone. Her camera lay on the floor, still recording. I pressed play. She was calling my name, then descending into a basement. The flashlight revealed children's drawings on the walls. Suns, houses, smiling people. And written in chalk, "We're still here." I shouted, but only my echo answered. I followed her voice into the dark. The air was damp and metallic. The stairs were narrow, the kind that make you feel someone's behind you. "Anya!" I yelled again. Nothing, just dripping water. Then I saw her backpack. The camera was still on. The last frame showed a flash of light, a scream, and small hands, thin, childlike, reaching from the shadows. I ran. I didn't think. I just ran. When I burst outside, the city had changed. Streets twisted, buildings shifted. Pripyat no longer followed logic. It felt alive, moving, rearranging itself. By sunset, I stumbled into a building marked Medical Center. Inside, the walls peeled. The air stank of iodine and rust. In the corner, an old TV turned on. On the screen was a recording of me and Anya. Only, I didn't remember filming it. In the video, I smiled at the camera, and behind me stood Anya. pale, unmoving, staring straight into the lens. I couldn't move. Anya's face on the screen didn't blink, but her eyes, they followed me. Each time I looked away, her mouth seemed to change slightly, forming the beginning of a smile. I yanked the TV cord from the wall. Instantly, the power went out. My flashlight cut through the dark, and that's when I saw it. Words scratched into the paint with fingernails. "Don't turn it off." Cold panic washed over me. I stepped back, heading for the exit, but the door wouldn't budge. The handle burned hot, as if someone was gripping it tightly from the other side. I slammed into it. Nothing. Searching for another way, I heard soft footsteps. Light, quick, childlike. The beam of my flashlight landed on a small girl in a torn Soviet dress. Eyes closed, face pale, powdered with dust. She held a headless teddy bear. "Where's Anya?" I whispered. She didn't answer, just turned and started walking down the corridor. I followed. The hall stretched longer with every step. At the end, a door. The girl vanished. Inside the room were rows of tiny beds, each with a doll. Every doll faced the same direction, the door I'd just entered through. On the floor lay my camera. I was sure I'd left it outside. I pressed play and it was recording. The screen showed me standing in that same room, but behind me was a shadow, human, formless. I spun around. Nothing. Only the faint rustle of fabric. That's when I realized these weren't ghosts. Pripyat itself was alive, watching, waiting. I burst out of the building, gasping for air. The sky was gray, the sun had vanished. Streets looped back on themselves. Every corner looked the same. When I finally reached the Pripyat sign, the sun was setting. My camera lay in the dirt. It turned on by itself. The last video played, me and Anya, smiling, standing by the same sign. "This was our last day in Pripyat," I said to the lens. "Thank you for being with us." The problem was, I never said that. The camera slipped from my hands, hit the ground, and shut off. The Geiger counter clicked behind me. It was working again. But instead of radiation levels, the display showed one number, 1986. And that's when I understood. We weren't filming Pripyat. Pripyat was filming us.
Story 1. Silence in Pripyat. Part 1. Expanded. The road into Pripyat was empty, except for the crunch of gravel beneath our tires. Every mile brought us closer to a city frozen in time, a city abandoned yet heavy with memory. The signs of life were gone. No laughter, no hum of cars, not even the whisper of birds. Windows were shattered, roofs sagging, and faded murals peeled like forgotten skin from the walls. "I can't believe we're actually doing this," Anya said, voice trembling as she adjusted her camera strap. She refused to let go of the tripod, clutching it like a lifeline. I tried to smile, but my own stomach churned. I had been dreaming about this for years, filming Pripyat, capturing its silence for the world. Yet now, standing here, the air felt thick, almost oppressive. Our guide, an older man who had spent his youth wandering these ruins, waved us through the checkpoint. The metal gate screeched as it opened, and a sudden gust of wind carried a faint smell of rust and dust. He gave me a knowing look. "You don't belong here," he said, and for a moment, I understood. But it was too late to turn back. We started with the streets. The Ferris wheel loomed in the distance, rusted and skeletal, casting long shadows over the crumbling playground below. Dolls, discolored and cracked, were scattered across the sand. A swing swayed slightly, moved by a breeze or by something else. I couldn't tell. Every sound seemed amplified. The crunch of our boots, the distant hum of a Geiger counter, the hollow whistle of wind through broken windows. "This place, it's like time stopped," Anya whispered, barely audible. I nodded, adjusting my camera. My hands shook. This was exactly the footage I wanted, but it was more than that. Pripyat had a pulse, subtle, eerie, almost imperceptible, yet undeniably there. Inside one of the apartment blocks, the air was cooler, damp with mildew. The wallpaper hung in tatters, and layers of dust coated every surface. A small toy truck lay abandoned on the floor, one wheel missing. I picked it up, turning it in my hand. Faded letters scratched into the wall nearby caught my eye. Dima, 6 years old. My parents' son, a child I had been, once stood here. Memories flooded back. My mother calling me for dinner, the echo of laughter in the hallways. I swallowed hard. This city wasn't just abandoned, it was alive in memory. And yet it was also watching. The camera in my hands captured every detail: cracked glass, warped floors, the way light fell through the broken windows at a slant that made shadows twist unnaturally. I moved cautiously, each step measured. The Geiger counter's clicking grew irregular, quickening and slowing in bursts. Something else was here. Something unseen. We found the kindergarten next, its doors hanging open, hinges squealing in the wind. Tiny chairs, desks tipped over, artwork pinned to the walls. A frozen echo of children long gone. Anya filmed silently, her hands trembling. I could hear her breathing in the otherwise silent space. Then came the sound. Soft, almost imperceptible at first, footsteps. Not ours. Someone walking lightly on the dusty floors above. I froze. It's probably rats, I whispered, though my voice lacked conviction. The footsteps continued, rhythmic, deliberate, circling overhead. And then a whisper of singing, faint, melodic, childlike. I switched on my flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating dust particles floating in the stale air. Nothing moved, yet the feeling of being watched intensified. Anya's grip on the camera tightened, and I realized she was pale, staring at the shadows that seemed to shift at the edges of the light. We decided to spend the night in one of the apartments. I set up the camera to record a time-lapse, the moonlight crawling across cracked walls and broken furniture. The night stretched slowly, each minute dragging, filled with the occasional creak of the building settling. Then, a scream. We bolted awake. The camera had fallen, its screen frozen on the corner of the room. And there it was, a shadow. Black, human-shaped, standing at the edge between us and the door. Not moving but present. I ran to the door, Geiger counter in hand, 0. The air was heavy, suffocating. For the first time, I understood the truth. We were not alone. And perhaps we never had been. The morning arrived as a heavy, suffocating silence. Even the wind had disappeared. Anya sat by the broken window, staring out at the empty city, her camera forgotten on her lap. Her pale face reflected the gray light of the dawn. "We're leaving today," she said finally, voice flat, almost hollow. I nodded, though deep inside I felt a pull I couldn't resist. I had to capture one last shot, the final glimpse of this abandoned world before it swallowed us entirely. I stepped outside alone, wandering through the square. The Ferris wheel rose above me, skeletal and rusted, its shadow stretching like a claw across the cracked asphalt. I launched the drone, eager to record a sweeping aerial view. The controller's screen flickered, and a figure appeared on the roof of the old kindergarten. But motionless. Watching. I zoomed in. Nothing. The figure vanished as if it had never been. The signal cut abruptly. The drone crashed somewhere in the dust below. My heart hammered. I ran toward the building, breathing hard. As I climbed the staircase, I noticed small footprints pressed into the dust. Childlike, delicate. They led straight to the edge of the roof, and then stopped. Below, nothing. No drone. No trace. I turned to head back to Anya, but the reflections in the windows caught my eye. Shadows moved across the floors, fleeting and unnatural. Each time I looked away, I swore I saw figures in every window, following, observing. When I returned to the apartment, Anya was gone. Her camera lay on the floor, still recording. I pressed play and my stomach dropped. On the screen, she was calling my name, descending into the basement. The flashlight revealed walls plastered with drawings, suns, houses, stick figures of people. Then, crudely scrawled in chalk, "We are still here." I shouted, but only my echo answered. Descending into the basement, the air grew damp and metallic, smelling of decay and rust. The narrow staircase pressed in on me, each step heavy, each shadow seeming to stretch closer. "Anya!" I screamed. Silence. Only the slow drip of water, the faint scratch of something moving in the dark. In the corner, her backpack lay abandoned. The camera still recording. The last frames flickered. A flash of light, a scream, and thin, pale hands stretching from the shadows. I couldn't see who they belonged to. I didn't care. I ran. Outside, the city was different. Streets twisted in impossible directions. Buildings shifted when I blinked. Pripyat was no longer just a city. It was alive, an entity moving in its own logic, cold and impenetrable. As the sun began to dip, I stumbled upon the old medical center. The walls were flaking, the smell of iodine heavy. Rusted hospital beds lay in disarray. In the corner, a TV flickered on by itself. On the screen, I saw us, me and Anya, standing in this very room. I didn't remember filming it. I smiled at the lens, but behind me was her pale form, unblinking, staring directly at the camera. I froze. My voice caught in my throat. The TV continued to flicker, silent but relentless. It was showing me the past and the present simultaneously, and it was waiting that I stood frozen in front of the flickering TV. Anya's eyes on the screen followed me, unblinking, yet somehow alive. Her mouth moved slightly, the hint of a smile that shouldn't have been there. I wanted to look away, to flee, but my feet were glued to the floor. I yanked the cord from the wall. Darkness swallowed the room, only my flashlight cutting through the black. That's when I saw it, words scratched into the paint with fingernails, "Don't turn it off." A cold panic crawled up my spine. I stepped back, reaching for the door, but the handle burned under my grip. Someone, or something, was holding it from the other side. I slammed my shoulder against the door. Nothing. I started searching for another exit. Then I heard footsteps. Like quick childlight, I shone the flashlight down the hall. A small girl stood there in a tattered Soviet dress, eyes closed, face pale and dusty. She held a headless teddy bear tightly against her chest. "Where's Anya?" I asked, voice barely a whisper. The girl didn't respond. She turned and began walking down the corridor, slow, deliberate. Instinct told me to follow, and I did, my footsteps echoing in the hollow hallway. The hall stretched endlessly. The walls narrowed with every step, the ceiling seeming lower, pressing down. At the end, a door appeared. The girl vanished. I pushed the door open and froze. The room was filled with rows of tiny beds. Dolls, hundreds of them, lay scattered across the sheets, all facing the same direction, the doorway through which I had entered. Their glassy eyes reflected the dim light of my flashlight. I stepped closer. On the floor lay my camera. I had left it outside. I pressed play. The footage showed me standing in the same room, but behind me, a shadow. Human-shaped, featureless, yet impossibly solid. I spun around, nothing. Only the faint rustle of fabric, as if the air itself were breathing around me. I realized then, these weren't ghosts. Pripyat wasn't empty. It was alive. Waiting. Observing. I bolted from the building, lungs burning. Outside, the sky had turned gray, the sun swallowed by clouds. Streets twisted and looped, buildings shifted. Nothing looked familiar. When I finally stumbled back to the old Pripyat sign, I collapsed onto the cracked asphalt. The camera lay at my feet. It turned on by itself. The last video played, me and Anya smiling by the same sign. This was our last day in Pripyat. "Thank you for being with us," I said into the lens. The problem was, I never said that. The camera slipped from my hands, hitting the ground and shutting off. Behind me, the Geiger counter clicked once, then again, working. But instead of radiation, the display showed one number, 1986. And then I understood, we weren't filming Pripyat. Pripyat was filming us.
The City Without Stars. Part 1. The night swallowed the city whole. Streetlights flickered like dying fireflies, and a heavy fog rolled in, clinging to the broken asphalt and shattered windows. Elena walked alone, her camera slung over her shoulder, recording every step. The city had been abandoned for decades, a former mining town that the government erased from maps after a series of mysterious disappearances. She had arrived with a small team of urban explorers, but they had scattered hours ago, spooked by strange noises that seemed to echo from every direction. The only sound now was her own breathing and the soft crunch of debris under her boots. Elena paused at the intersection of Main Street and 7th Avenue. Street signs leaned crookedly, paint peeling. She could see the outlines of houses, some half-collapsed, their roofs gaping like broken teeth. The fog shifted unnaturally, forming shapes that looked almost human. She shook her head, telling herself it was just the mist playing tricks on her eyes. She raised the camera, scanning the street. A faint light flickered in a window 2 blocks ahead. Curiosity overcame caution. She moved closer. The light was rhythmic, almost like a pulse. Every step felt heavier, as if the air itself resisted her progress. Inside the building, the floorboards creaked under her weight. The walls were lined with peeling wallpaper, yellowed with age. A single room had a table covered in dust, and on it lay old letters, brittle and curled at the edges. Elena picked one up. The handwriting was jagged, frantic. They watched from above. The stars are not what they seem. A chill ran down her spine. She dropped the letter and glanced at the window. Outside, the fog had thickened, obscuring the street. The faint pulse of light was gone. In its place, a shadow flickered across the glass. Human-shaped, but wrong. Its movements too quick, too precise, like a marionette controlled by unseen strings. Elena's pulse quickened. She backed toward the door, but it slammed shut in front of her. No wind. No one was there. Panic set in. She grabbed the doorknob, twisted, shook. Nothing. The shadow reappeared, now reflected in the cracked mirror on the wall. It was closer, always just behind her, yet never advancing in a natural way. Her breathing became shallow, every exhale a cloud in the cold, stale air. The room felt alive, watching, and then she heard it, a whisper, soft and low, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. "You shouldn't be here." Elena spun around. The room was empty. Her flashlight flickered, then died, plunging her into darkness. In the silence, she realized the letters on the table had moved. She didn't remember touching them, yet they were now scattered across the floor, spelling a single word. "Look!" She turned toward the window again. Outside, the fog had parted slightly, revealing the night sky, or what should have been the sky. No stars, only blackness, infinite and oppressive. And moving within that void, tiny, flickering points as if someone or something was watching her from above. A sense of vertigo overtook her. The city seemed to contract and expand, streets folding into themselves like paper. Elena stumbled backward, tripping over a chair. Her camera fell, still recording. On the small screen, she saw the shadow again. Closer now, reflected in every surface. Not advancing, not retreating, simply existing, observing her panic. She grabbed the camera and ran. The building seemed to stretch endlessly, hallways looping back, doors opening into rooms that shouldn't exist. Every corner she turned, the shadows multiplied, always at the edge of her vision. She could feel them watching, breathing, moving with a purpose she could not understand. When she finally burst outside, the fog had swallowed the street entirely. The buildings were distorted, streets misaligned, like the city itself had reshaped to trap her. She ran toward the faint glow of a street lamp in the distance, hoping it would lead her to some familiar landmark. But the light blinked out the instant she approached. In the sudden darkness, she felt it, a hand brushing against her shoulder, cold, fleeting, yet impossibly heavy. She screamed, spinning, but no one was there. Only the fog, the shadows, and the emptiness of a city that no longer obeyed the laws of reality. Elena ran blindly into the night, each step echoing off walls that twisted and turned unnaturally. The letters from the table, the word "look," seemed to repeat in her mind, etched into her vision. Somewhere in the distance, a whisper carried again, soft but unmistakable. "You are not alone." Part 2. Elena didn't stop running. Her lungs burned, her legs trembled, but the city seemed to stretch endlessly ahead, streets folding in on themselves like a cruel maze. Every turn she took brought her to a street she had already passed, or one that hadn't existed before. The fog thickened, clinging to her skin, whispering against her ears in words she couldn't quite understand. Her camera slipped from her shoulder, hitting the cracked asphalt. She snatched it up, the screen flickering with static, revealing glimpses of the shadows following her. They weren't normal shadows, too tall, too angular, moving against the light in impossible ways. Every time she tried to focus on them, they disappeared, leaving only a feeling of cold, a pressure on her chest, and the sense that someone, or something, was inches from her face. Elena stumbled into a square. A fountain, long dried, sat at its center. Rusted statues of children holding hands encircled the base, their faces chipped, their eyes hollow. The fountain itself was cracked, a pool of stagnant water reflecting the dim glow of a single flickering lamp. And beneath the surface, she thought she saw movement, tiny ripples like hands brushing the water, though no wind stirred the air. A sound echoed behind her. Footsteps. Multiple. Not running, not chasing, just walking. Methodical. Measured. Yet with each step, the ground seemed to tremble slightly, as if responding to their weight. Elena spun around. Nothing. Just empty streets, broken signs, and the mist curling between the buildings. The whispers returned. Low. Unintelligible at first, then gradually forming words. Stay. Watch. Follow. Her heart hammered. She forced herself to speak aloud. Who's there? What do you want? The answer came not in words, but in a movement across the square. The statues' heads tilted, just slightly following her. Her pulse raced. She stumbled backward, tripping over a loose cobblestone. The camera hit the ground, recording everything. Through the fog, she thought she saw figures emerging from the darkness. Small at first, then growing taller, more distorted. Human shapes, yet all wrong. Limbs too long, movements too precise, as if stitched together by some unknown logic. They didn't chase her, didn't approach aggressively. They simply observed, following her every move without a single sound. Elena backed into an alley, trying to find a way out. The buildings on either side were close enough to touch, the walls slick with moisture. Her flashlight illuminated peeling paint, shattered windows, and graffiti, messages left by previous explorers, warnings she hadn't understood until now. Do not look. Do not stay. Do not return. Her breathing was ragged. She turned on the camera, hoping to capture proof, but the screen displayed something impossible. Shadows that weren't behind her. They were within the camera itself. Inside the lens, the alley extended farther than reality allowed, twisting and bending in ways her mind could not comprehend. Suddenly, she felt a presence close, almost brushing against her back. A cold hand, spectral yet heavy, pressed against her shoulder. She spun, swinging the flashlight. Empty. Nothing. The fog itself seemed to close in, thicker than air, suffocating. Then she saw the sky, or what should have been the sky. The stars were gone. Complete darkness stretched above, infinite and oppressive. Within it, tiny flickers appeared, movement like watching countless eyes blink in unison. She couldn't tell how far away they were, but the feeling was absolute. Someone, something, was watching her, calculating her movements, knowing her next step before she took it. Panic overtook reason. Elena ran blindly through the streets, the shadows multiplying, appearing in reflections in broken windows, puddles, even the camera screen. The city itself seemed to breathe, its streets folding, walls bending, alleys shifting. Escape became meaningless. She realized with a sinking certainty. The city had claimed her path, her steps, her attention. She was part of its labyrinth now, and the whispers persistent low, now clearly forming a single phrase over and over. You belong to the city. Elena ran until her legs burned and her lungs threatened to give out. Every street she turned onto was unfamiliar, yet somehow familiar, as if the city remembered her movements and twisted itself to trap her. The fog clung to her like a living thing, cold and suffocating, whispering fragments of words she couldn't piece together. She stumbled into a large plaza. The fountain from earlier loomed ahead, but now it seemed larger, monstrous even. The statues surrounding it had shifted. Hands pointed outward, faces twisted into expressions of quiet horror, eyes black voids staring directly at her. A subtle hum began, vibrating in the ground beneath her feet. Elena clutched her camera, filming frantically. Through the lens, she saw movement in the mist, shadows converging, coalescing into forms that resembled people. But the closer they came, the more unnatural they appeared. Elongated limbs, angular bodies, faces blurred into static-like distortions. She tried to run, but the ground beneath her seemed to change, tiles shifting and folding. It was no longer a flat plaza. It was a maze of impossible geometry. Every path she took ended at the same fountain, the same statues, the same black void above. Her breath came in short, ragged gasps. She dropped to her knees, pressed the camera to her face, and filmed herself. Her reflection in a broken glass pane showed not just her, but dozens of shadowed figures standing silently behind her. When she turned around, no one was there. A low, pervasive voice whispered directly into her mind, cutting through the panic. "Do not leave. You are part of us now." Elena screamed, running blindly down a street that had no end. Buildings leaned toward her, doors and windows opening into black voids she couldn't comprehend. Her footsteps echoed endlessly, overlapping with other steps that weren't hers, lighter, heavier, pacing in impossible rhythms. She stumbled upon an old-school building. Its doors hung open, and inside, the hallways were endless, corridors twisting like a maze. Every classroom was filled with desks, but each one contained a doll. Not ordinary dolls. These were lifelike, pale, staring with unblinking eyes, seated at the desks as if waiting for children who would never return. Elena felt her stomach twist. Her camera captured every detail. She wanted to leave, to escape, but the city didn't allow it. A shadow passed over her shoulder in the footage, a figure moving impossibly fast, disappearing whenever she looked directly at it. The whispers grew louder, forming words she could finally understand. The city watches. The city waits. You are observed. You are noted. She stumbled into the principal's office. Papers were scattered, and a blackboard had one phrase written in chalk. No stars, no sky, only us. Her gaze shifted upward. The ceiling seemed to dissolve into the blackness of the night above. And through that blackness, flickering points of light moved in patterns, like eyes blinking in synchronization. Elena's knees buckled. The camera slipped from her hands, hitting the floor. On the screen, the city itself seemed alive. Streets shifting, buildings bending, shadows moving with independent intent. She felt invisible fingers brushing her skin, cold, pressing, pulling her forward. She screamed again, running into a side alley that led to a staircase descending below the street. She had no choice but to follow. The stairwell was narrow, endless, twisting, walls slick with condensation. The whispers followed, louder, insistent. Look, watch, stay. You belong to the city. By the time she reached the bottom, she was gasping, drenched in sweat and cold. The basement opened into a cavernous underground chamber. Rusted pipes hung from the ceiling, and shadows sprawled across the walls like creeping vines. In the center, a pool of still water reflected no ceiling, no walls, only the black void and the flickering points of light above. Elena approached it, trembling. Her reflection in the water was distorted, her face elongated, her eyes blackened. And then she realized the shadows weren't following her. They were inside her. Every step, every thought, every breath had been noted, mirrored, trapped. The whispers coalesced into one final sentence that echoed her mind, a sentence she knew she would never forget. You will not leave the city. You are part of the darkness now.